Hey, what's up? This is Jafunk, and this is how I remixed American Boy by Estelle and Kanye West. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So this remix was something I did for fun. It's already quite a funky track originally, but I just wanted to put my own spin on it. So there it is, there's my remix. I'm gonna keep the acapella muted just so I don't get any copyright issues with the video. This remix all started with the chords. The chords are exactly the same as the original. E flat major 7, C major 7, and then A minor 7. Then we go to F major 7, back to the original E minor 7. And with that A minor 7, I played a different inversion. So instead of playing here, which is quite low, I'm moving these bottom two notes up an octave. So instead of this, we're moving these two notes up. And once I had the chords put in, I went straight to the drums. We got a kick drum here. And this one's from my sample pack, Disco Gems. A lot of these loops in here are from my splice pack, Disco Gems 1 and Disco Gems 2, which just came out a couple of days ago. So we got that, we got the snare. Then we layer the clap on top, which is also from Disco Gems. And I just brightened that up with some Fab Filter Satin. And then we got the hi-hat. Same thing with a little bit of Fab Filter Satin, taking out the bottom end just to clean it up a touch and boosting the top end to make it brighter. And here's the difference. And all together sounds like this. Next we've got these extra claps. And I probably just added them in to beef up that clap a little bit, make it a bit thicker. Got the Valhalla vintage verb on that, so without it, it sounds like this. And then with on it just gives it a bit of space. Cut out some bottom end here with this EQ, just to help clean up the low end. And then we've got these extra drums in here. So we've got a clap. We've got a disco drum loop, just with a bit of EQ. And I think the reason that I did that was, again, just to thicken up this initial loop. Then we got this layer, just with the bottom end cut out again. Then we got this extra hi-hat loop. Again, with just a touch of boost on the high end there to give it a bit of presence. And the entire drum loop together then sounds like this. Oh, there's a tambourine as well, which is from my Disco Gems pack as well. And what I've done there, so that's the dry sound, and then I've put just a delay on that to give it this stereo effect. And what I'm doing there is the left side is set to 1 millisecond, the right side set to 6 milliseconds, and it just gives it the effect of it being super, super wide. And getting it out the way of the center, so that the vocal and the bass and the main elements can sit in the center, and then the percussion sits out of the way on the sides and doesn't clog up the mix. And I've put this Fab Filter Satin on there as well. Same sort of thing, just boosting the high end, removing some of the low end. Just helping it to cut through the mix and making it a little bit brighter. So if I just show you, I'll play the drum loop again without these extra layers so you can hear how they beef it up. Now I'll add the other layers in. You can just hear how it makes it a little bit thicker and a little bit more full sounding. And there was one more little bit in there too, which was the congas. It's just a conga loop there, and I've taken out the bottom end again and boosted the highs. Making it a little bit brighter, a bit more present in the mix. That's just what this track needed. And all together now with the drums. Next, let's move to the chords. So we've got this layer here. And this is coming from a preset within Keyscape, LA Custom C7 Rock. And then I've just added again EQ cutting out the low end to make way for the bass. Next we've got this whirly sound here, which is another Keyscape preset. And this is the Wurlitzer 200A Retro Phaser. I've done this TAL chorus. Just to give it a bit of stereo width. And I'll just show you what that sounds like in context of the chorus. So you notice when I took it out of the mix there, it sounds a bit more empty. And so having those chords in the background are more just like pads. They fill out the mix and make it sound nice and warm for the chorus where we want it to sound nice and full. Then there's this other Rhodes here, which you hear in the intro and the breakdown. And so what those chords are, they're exactly the same, except what I've done with this first one is I've stacked 2 E major 7s on top of each other. So we've got this one, and then the same one an octave up. C major 7, the same idea. And then same thing on that A minor 7, it's this voicing. And then F major 7. And that one was from Keyscape 2. That is the Rhodes Classic Late 70s preset. And I've put some EQ on there. I tested out having some stereo, but I ended up not using that and using the TAL chorus again, just to give it a bit of width. So without it, it sounds like this. That's with it. And yeah, it just gets it out of the way of the middle, makes room for the vocal and those main central elements. So next we got the guitars. There's a couple of guitar riffs going on. We've got this muted line here. And then we've got this guitar octave one here. So both of those I played with my trusty Fender Strat here. And that first line is just 3 notes. So all I'm doing there is I'm playing 1 string and I'm palm muting the notes. So what that means is if I hold my guitar on the side like that, rather than playing it like this with my palm off the strings, I'm just resting the outside of my hand there on the strings to deaden the sound. And then the second guitar part, this octave bit here, all I'm doing there is I'm playing this note. And I'm playing, so 2 strings in this case, I'm playing 4th string, the octave of this. And I'm just doing a 16th pattern. So that's all I'm playing. And I think actually in the final recording, I may not have quite been hitting that lower note. If we listen to it, just sounds like I'm only playing the top note, but I was intending to play both notes. I just kind of missed that lower note. So that was how I played those 2 parts. So with the guitar, this is the dry sound. And let's go through the plugins, the processing on this one. So first of all, I've got a compressor. And that's just doing about 5 decibels of compression there, just to glue the sound and kind of squash it together. And we've got this EQ. Next thing is we've got the Corey Wong archetype, just to give it some amp emulation. And then the plugin which I think makes the most difference is this phaser. So here's without it, here's with it. And that's what really gives it that Jamiroquai-esque sound, in my opinion. Is it's so funky just having a phaser. And the final preset on it is this TAL chorus again, to give it some stereo. And what I've done is I've duplicated it. So we have a left and a right which are playing the same thing, but they're different takes, so they're not exactly the same. And all I've got on the group there is a compressor, which is just gluing the 2 different signals together and again making the volume a little bit more even across the board. And I've got some EQ to cut out the bottom end. And on this one, cut out quite a bit of the bottom end again. It's just a little bit muddy. So just cleaned up that bottom end. And I've done some boosting on this EQ again at 8K. So here's what it sounds like without it. Just tightens it a little bit to my ear, gets rid of some of that low end. Then we got this bass line. And this was recorded on my J bass, which I'll get out now. So this is my J bass. It's a Squier 70s J bass. And for this tone, I had all the knobs here completely up. So both pickups turned to the max. And then I came up with the bass line based on the chords. So the chords were E major 7, so this is E. Then we go down to C, C major 7, and then we have that A minor 7. So the bass line goes something like this. So that's the core of the bass line, and then what you hear throughout the track is some other little licks that I throw in just again to give it some variation and keep it interesting, not just playing the same thing on loop for the entire track. And now for the processing on this one. This is the dry sound here. First plugin is this compressor. And all that's doing is squashing it quite a bit there, about 7 decibels of compression. Now I've got another compressor on it. Just doing 2 decibels of compression. And the reason I do the double compressor is because I find with plugins, they're not able to handle a lot of heavy lifting. So rather than having one compressor doing like 20 decibels of compression, if you spread that across 3 different plugins, 2 to 3 different plugins, it'll actually sound a bit smoother and cleaner. And then all I've got is a compressor that's doing some side chain. That's the bass. Next part we've got is this synth here, which is my recreation of what you hear in the original track. And so how I made this sound was, this is the original Diva preset. I just searched through my preset bank and found this. This was about the closest sound I could find to that original synth that you hear in the track, the original track. And then what I did was I added this distortion on it. And that's just beefing it up quite a bit and making it sound a little bit more chunky, a little bit more fat. Then I've got this delay effect again on it to make it super wide. And this is the compressor. Again, just squashing out the volume level, making it nice and even so there's not too many big spikes. Some EQ, just removing that bottom end and taming that harsh top end a little bit. And then we got the Wolf compressor with a bit of lo-fi here. And what that does is it just kind of rolls off the top end nicely. Just to make it sound a little bit smoother, a little bit more analog, rather than that harsh VST synth sound that you get. Next up, we got the strings, which I think is a real key part of this track and something that gives it that disco kind of orchestral vibe. And this is a plugin called Disco Strings UDS by SoundPaint. I'm going to put a link to that in the description below, one of my favorite plugins at the moment. So this is what you hear in the breakdown. So we've got some chords. So what you're hearing here is, remember our chord progression's E major 7. But what I've done is I've taken off that top note and I'm just playing the triad there, so that's E major. And the reason I took that top note off was because I've got this melody line here which I've separated, and that's playing that top D sharp, which is the 7 of E major 7 in that first chord. And the reason I did that is because that lead line is quite a melodic line and I wanted that to stand out. So I've actually, see there in the volume section here, I've turned the volume up. That's -1 and that's -4.5. So the chords are a little bit more subtle and that melody line is a bit more prominent to make it stand out. This chord sound is in the legato, which basically it means a long sustained, it's like a long sustained note. And the second sound here is a portamento. Now what that means is if you notice when I'll play a couple of notes here, you'll hear it bend between the notes. It doesn't do it on every note. It's got a bit of a mind of its own, this thing. But on some notes it does this bend. And that's just a really nice articulation. And then I've got this one here, which you hear just before the drop. So that's a more punchy one. It's the shorts, in the shorts here. So you notice when I play the note, it's got a bit of a quicker attack and it's yeah, a bit more staccato. And then we've got these ones which are really, really nice. They're the falls. You see there, it's the falls fast Neumann. And so I've combined that with this. So that build up to the chorus. Then the last two elements are the horns. And those both came from this loop here, which is in my Disco Gems Splice Pack again, which you can find, link in the description. And I just chopped up this loop. So this is the original loop. And so you'll hear this is this one here. I chopped that bit up, and then these are all, I don't know exactly which ones they are. I'd have to go back and find them, but yeah, these are all chopped up from those other little lines. And then the last thing you hear in the breakdown is this chimes effect. It's a bit of a transitional thing. Just makes it sound all magical, and yeah, it just helps transition from that intro there with the drums into the breakdown section. So that was my remix of American Boy. I hope you liked it. And once again, if you do want to learn more about music production, I'm running a course with Gamsung Sound, which starts on Monday. It's going to be online. It's going to be the most in-depth course I've done to date, covering many different tips and tricks to get you guys making better funk, soul, and sort of disco music. And we're going to be going through things like music theory, production, sound design, arrangement, and going through some of my most listened to tracks as well, like Ecstasy, Weekend Love, Fool for You, and you also get access to all the project files as well. So if you're interested in that course, check that out through the link in the description, and we'll see you next time.